This episode of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is brought to you by Offgirl, an award-winning comic book series from writer Tina Fine and artist Mark Ryhill. Offgirl is a highly unconventional superhero story about a woman named Julia Davenport whose every orgasm unleashes a murderous demon. ComicBooks.com writes, "The beautiful art and smartly handled taboo subject matter make for what will most assuredly be a cult classic. Learn more over at offgirl.com."
Wired.com presents The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. And here is your host, David Barr Kirtley.
Hello, and welcome to episode 401 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. Today on the show we'll be discussing cults and horror, and this will involve spoilers for the movie Midsommar, and may also include spoilers for other movies that we discuss, so just be aware of that. And I'm joined by three guests. So first up, we've got Grady Hendrix, making his 18th appearance on the show. He's the author of nonfiction books such as Paperbacks from Hell, and novels such as My Best Friend's Exorcism and the upcoming The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. He also wrote the screenplay for the recent movie Satanic Panic. So Grady, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
Then next up, we've got Theresa DeLucci, making her 10th appearance on the show. Her articles have appeared on Boing Boing and Den of Geek, and her short fiction has appeared in Strange Horizons and Tor.com. She's also the editor of Come Join Us by the Fire, a free audio anthology from Nightfire Books, the new horror imprint of Tor Books. So, Theresa, welcome to the show.
Skål!
And also joining us today is Paul Tremblay, making his 5th appearance on the show. He's the author of novels such as The Cabin at the End of the World and A Head Full of Ghosts, as well as the upcoming novel Survivor Song. Stephen King calls his recent book Growing Things and Other Stories one of the best collections of the 21st century. So, Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. And I assume everyone's already drank from their cup of Kool-Aid. Yes?
Sorry, oh, yeah.
Mushroom tea. Right?
Mushroom tea.
And today's show is brought to you by the new comic book series Offgirl, written by Tina Fine and illustrated by Mark Ryhill. As the story opens, our hero Julia Davenport has avoided having an orgasm for 10 years, because every time she does, it unleashes a terrifying demon that murders anyone nearby. But when she accidentally climaxes on the subway, killing several innocent bystanders, she discovers that one man is immune to her power, genius scientist Ben Topolsky, who may be the key to helping her find a cure. But first, Julia must harness her power to stop Stiletto, a serial killer who kidnaps women and forces them to run on treadmills wearing high heels until they die. The plot only gets crazier from there, as Julia finds herself at the center of a power struggle involving the U.S. president, cryptocurrency, biblical history, and alien refugees. It's a lot to manage, but with great pleasure comes great responsibility. Offgirl writer Tina Fine holds a Ph.D. in economics from Columbia, and before turning to writing, she ran the internet startup homeincloud.com, which was based on her dissertation. Her short films have appeared at the New York City Independent Film Festival 2015, the Boston International Kids Film Festival 2015, and the Toronto International Kids Film Festival 2016, and she also plans to adapt Offgirl as a film or TV series. Offgirl illustrator Mark Ryhill has produced over 70 covers for Starburst magazine, and was one of 50 artists handpicked by CBS for an art exhibition celebrating Star Trek's 50th anniversary. He was also named Best Newcomer/Breakthrough Artist at the ICN Awards in 2017. So again, the series is called Offgirl by Tina Fine and Mark Ryhill, and you can learn more over at offgirl.com. Alright, so now let's get to our panel. Well, yeah, so how this panel came about is that I finally got around to watching the movie Midsommar, which is the sort of follow-up from director Ari Aster, who made Hereditary, which we discussed back in episode 317. And it's about a group of Americans who travel to Sweden and witness a harvest festival, and turns out not so great for them. And I believe that Teresa's a big fan of this movie, right? So why don't we start out and have you just tell us why do you like this movie so much?
Well, it's beautiful, but absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't quite hold up as well on a second viewing, but the initial rush of watching it the first time, full disclosure, I was not sober the first time I went into the theater. I was decidedly and very unwisely not sober, so the first 15 minutes were some of the most distressing things I've felt in a movie theater since seeing Hereditary. So I kind of had Danny's sympathy, the main protagonist. It starts off with this horrible, tragic event with her family and her equally terrible boyfriend. Okay, maybe he's not as bad as a murder-suicide, but he's pretty bad. And then it turns into this candy-colored pastoral acid trip that's really laughable, but has some interesting ideas going on. And I think I just responded to it more emotionally than, like I said, logically.
Yeah, so this group of American students, they go to Sweden to, as I said, witness this harvest festival. And the first thing that happens is that they are given this mushroom tea or something that it's made from hallucinogenic mushrooms. And so yeah, the main character Danny has kind of a hallucinogenic trip where she sees grass growing out of her feet and stuff like that. So that's what Theresa's talking about when she experienced this under the influence.
Not of mushroom tea. I'm a lightweight. But yeah, it made me never want to do hallucinogens because it felt like that's what I imagine that would be like, and it looks fucking horrible.
Yeah, so I really agree with you. I mean, it sounds like maybe we had a similar experience because I love this movie. I thought just the experience of it was just, I don't know, there was just something that really like hit me. I have lots of problems with the specifics, and ordinarily all the problems I had with the specifics, if I had this many problems with the specifics of most any other movie, it would kind of dampen my enthusiasm for the movie. But for whatever reason, for this one, it just I didn't care so much. But I really think that the first act of the movie is fantastic, and I think that the third act of the movie is fantastic, and the second act, I really have a lot of plausibility issues, and I think most of my problems are there. But overall, I liked it a lot. And so Paul, you told me that you were not so much of a fan of this movie, right? So do you agree with my overall analysis there, or did you have a much different response to it?
I had a much different, much different response to it. I mean, I will say I had a very strong reaction to it. So, I guess points for that. I'm laughing.
It was like a bad trip for you.
So, I mean, to be honest, I really liked Hereditary, which we discussed. And so I think maybe part of my issues, I've been trying to dissect my feelings about this movie, for a while because I appear to be in the minority in my opinion of it, certainly amongst horror fans, who tend to like every horror movie they see. But I mean, maybe that's a cheap shot. No, I really did not like the movie. I thought it, it failed for me on many different levels. And I will admit up front, and I don't say this to try to garner sympathy because everyone has suffered, personal or family tragedies. But sort of, one of the key plot points of the movie that introduces the movie is, Danny loses both, her sister and both of her parents. And I don't know, I'm not going to say I was the boyfriend. I mean, obviously I'm not that character, but, my wife, Lisa, lost her parents within 2 months of each other, unexpectedly. They were like 65 and 70, but, we're not expecting their deaths. And to me, that sort of weighty grief, and, that's something I brought with me to the movie. So that, a lot of my reaction to it was, no, this is not how people would react to this. I mean, so that aside, part of my issue is I was really into the first hour, to be honest with you, until the older couple committed suicide, ritual suicide. And from there, with each passing minute, rage was growing in me. And a big part of it became, here are these grad students, supposed grad students, I assume are intelligent people, are going to study, this, pagan culture. And it's like they had never, had they ever seen a movie about pagan cultures or studied pagan cultures? They never once thought they were in trouble. There was that ridiculous 10-minute conversation between the British, when the British man disappeared and, his girlfriend was like, he wouldn't have left without me. And he was like, oh no, he did. And it went on for 10 minutes. And I don't know. I mean, that's just one part of it. For me, I felt like he couldn't decide if it was a movie about grief or a breakup movie. And I ultimately found both of those to be immature handlings of both of those emotions. I mean, that's my, fairly subjective opinion. This feels like a 20-year-old wrote a breakup movie, honestly. So anyway, I mean, that's like away from the cult part of things, but.
Yeah, well, let me jump in there because I mean,
I do want to just say, like, I agree with Theresa. I thought beautiful movie, and is it Pugh? Is that how you say your last name? Pugh. Yeah. Yes, I thought her performance is excellent. So I mean, those two things I'm totally on board with. But I thought the third act just evolved into a silly slasher with the discovery of the bodies. And anyway, sorry, I don't want to like totally shit on the movie, but like I definitely had a strong negative reaction to it.
Well, I mean, when I talk about how it sort of lost me in Act 2, I'm talking about exactly the thing you're saying, with the suicide of some members of the cult that are witnessed by the American couple or the American group, and their reaction to that, like you say, just totally felt unreal to me. I think we should explain, if someone hasn't seen that the boyfriend, Christian, when he finds out that his girlfriend's parents or family has all died in this murder suicide, he was planning to break up with her, and now sort of feels like obligated not to, and obligated to take her along on this trip. And so maybe we can come back to that. But so let's get Grady in here. So Grady, what did you think of Midsommar?
Well, okay, so I mean, so full disclosure, I read the script. I didn't see the movie, but I. To me, it was just kind of like, I'm a little more with Paul. It was kind of like IKEA Wicker Man. Like, if you can't do better than the Wicker Man and you're just going to remake the Wicker Man, why get out of bed? Like, it's been made. And I really didn't buy the equation of grief plus acid divided by insensitive guys equals burning my boyfriend alive in a bear suit. Like, that just doesn't scan for me. I mean, I assume that's what happens in the movie too, right?
Yeah,
like,
more or less.
Like,
sure.
Yeah, so like, I just didn't buy it. And for what it's worth, the script's great. It's really well written. There's lots of like backstory on the religious cult and all that stuff that's really fascinating. But I don't know. I was just like, people don't act like this.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, like, I think for part of me, I would just say this, like, to get it out, like, and, as a horror fan, like, I obviously have my likes and dislikes, and I've never been one for, like, the comeuppance movie, and I know that's a huge favorite for a lot of horror fans, especially, like, within the slasher genre, and, clearly it's sort of like a comeuppance kind of ending, and it's just, I don't know, so for me, I don't know, I'm just not into the comeuppance thing, because as you said, like, for a movie that's not supernatural, if you try to lay it out, like, all right, if this is actually real life, does asshole boyfriend, and this was to me the smallest problem of the movie, like asshole boyfriend getting burned. Like, but I didn't feel anything, mainly because of the grief aspect. I didn't feel like it tied all the way through. And with Grady mentioning Wicker Man, I felt like, having seen the original Wicker Man, there was no narrative tension for me because I knew what was going to happen. I mean, almost exactly, I knew what was going to happen, which is fine. But like, to me, what makes the Wicker Man still hold up, like, just to compare very briefly, in the Wicker Man, you have a true outsider, showing up to this, British island. And I mean, he's really a representation of, I don't know, like our, like, quote unquote modern society or bourgeois society, middle class. He's, this Catholic man, total outsider, has no idea what he's in for. And to me, that ending of that movie is just really powerful. That juxtaposition of sort of, the juxtaposition of the ecstasy of this, cult, and like, and he's trying to profess his own faith, and it's just this nice little, two rams butting heads there at the end. Where in Midsommar you have these interlopers, but they're supposed to be experts. I think they could have played it. I wanted them to be more expert, I guess, was my big thing. Like, I wish they were smarter. You still could have had stuff happen and surprise them, but like, seriously, dude, the dude's going to go in and take pictures of the secret, flash pictures at night of the secret scroll room, and just, stuff like that.
That was terrible. That was like the number one thing I remember pissing me off in it. I'm like, that's how Chidi got to the bad place.
Okay, so there's a lot there.
Sorry.
If anyone doesn't know, Theresa, the actor who plays one of these Americans is the same actor who plays Chidi in the TV show The Good Place. So that's what that's a reference to. I actually had not seen The Wicker Man before watching Midsommar. And so I think I actually liked Midsommar a lot more not having seen The Wicker Man, because
that totally makes sense.
This is like really, I've never seen a horror movie that's so, it's like bright sunshine and beautiful. It's in this beautiful scenic valley, and everybody's pretty and friendly and smiling and being accommodating and everything. And just to have a horror story set in that kind of environment, I just thought was really interesting and different. And then, after I went and watched Wicker Man, I was kind of like, oh, it's kind of like the Wicker Man.
Well, that's the thing, though. I think I think your reaction to it's exactly right. You know what I mean? Like, it is a really interesting thing. Yeah. But I guarantee you Ari Aster's seen The Wicker Man. And, like, I just don't understand the impulse of spending this chunk of your life making something that's been made before. That just confuses me.
I feel like, I know I would be hypocritical to say, like, you can't, like, remake or, put a twist on something. I wrote A Head Full of Ghosts, which more than riffs on The Exorcist, but what I was looking for was something that would twist The Wicker Man. I mean, like Theresa said, it is visually stunning movie. I was totally with it. And my favorite parts of the movie were those first maybe half hour of scenes where after the deaths of the parents and like the friends, the boyfriend and her were having dinner. It was really like deliciously uncomfortable. And then I feel like it just, went off the rails totally. So like that I was into. And then I feel like once they got to Sweden, it was just like, I don't know, by the numbers, people just doing not smart, people that I thought were supposed to be smart doing not smart things. Like even as something as simple as, the actor who was Chidi playing it. I'm terrible with character names. I should have had it
Josh.
there. Yeah. So, when they say the name of the suicide ritual, when the cult members say it, he recognizes the name of that. And but he doesn't tell the others. I think that would have been, I think that was a moment of potential to be like, to him to, for them to talk about it. I know it's sort of like shocking to them, but that's when it rang false, was like, he didn't tell them what was coming. And then when it happens, is essentially, aside from the British couple, like a group shrug, the sad boyfriend and girlfriend are still just too busy sort of, woe is me as the boyfriend. And, obviously I understand, Danny, has had this loss, but I don't know. It just seemed like there was no reaction to the death of those people. Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to rehash a comment that we talked about before, but
I want to get Theresa back in here. Theresa, do you want to defend Midsommar in any way?
Well, I could understand, if you haven't seen The Wicker Man, this might all seem very new in a way. And I think it's, I would agree, like Ari Aster definitely saw The Wicker Man, The Blood on Satan's Claws, Witchfinder General, like all that stuff. But I think it's kind of like an empty resonance after the end of this movie, because it's like Wicker Man want to be with a Reddit conspiracy theorist sensibility, because they are still talking about everything in this movie on Reddit. There's, I'm in that community there and just kind of keep an eye on it. And they're still talking about Danny and like little visual tricks and what it could possibly mean. And I think, that's where he wanted it to play. And that's kind of it. And it is ultimately a bit empty because, what is he really saying about grief? What is he saying about breakups? In the moment when I first saw it and first left the theater, I felt kind of similar to how I did at the end of The Witch, where it was like, oh yes, girl, burn it all down. Fuck yeah. But then you think about it for like a day and you're like, well, this didn't make sense. This didn't make sense. This was stupid. They telegraphed a lot of it, but you think about certain scenes. And again, I think it's like an emotional resonance that makes people want to go back and kind of examine some stuff, especially that like tinfoil hat Reddit community.
One thing that I saw about the end of the movie, so at the end, the girlfriend basically sacrifices her shitty boyfriend to the cult. And one thing I saw was that apparently there's a 3-hour version of this that Ari Aster is working on, that he's planning to release. That apparently,
and Paul is going to be first in line to buy a ticket.
But that apparently adds a lot more material in that makes that turn at the end seem more justified, or at least built up to it more.
Yeah, they add about maybe, 20. Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
No, I was just saying maybe even more active. You never actually. From my memory, I could be wrong, but I feel like I don't even remember her actively pointing at him. You never actually see her active choice. It's like they say we're going to choose from these people, and like the camera's on her, and then they cut to, the hut or whatever the hell it is that they're going to burn, and he's in there. So it's not even like I felt like you never got to see her make the choice. You see her sort of walking around in the flowers like in a daze. You get her smile, but
it's clear that she had chosen him to me. I don't remember exactly the visual.
Oh no, I don't think it's not clear, but I don't know. It just made it seem like less active. Like, I don't know. Like, I wanted to see her like actually point or say something or totally be into it. I mean, for most of the time, she just looked like she was like blank. You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to, all right, this is what I'm doing and going for it. I don't know. Like I said, by that point, I was just, not happy anyway. So, and like I said, I know I'm in the vast minority of this.
Sounds like you're still not happy.
No.
Have some mushroom tea. I saw this in the theater on opening night, actually, with my sister, who was also the one to pull out her vape pen before we walked into the theater. Thank you for that, my sister. And the audience was so vocal during this movie. It was really fun, like a communal experience of uncomfortable laughter, screams, and then at the end when, they tell Danny, like, you have to pick. They didn't show her choice, but like everyone around us in the theater was like, oh. And so that just sticks in my head as this moment where everyone's like, oh yes. That's it. We know who she's picking.
But I mean, I basically agree with Paul that the movie really sort of lost me. So what happens is the Americans go to this commune, and it turns out that once you reach a certain age, you're supposed to sacrifice yourself, and they watch this happen. And I think that the movie would have been so much better for me if that scene just did not happen in the movie at all. And then people just started disappearing and everything. But there was no sort of overt sign of danger, because I think that this is sort of similar to me to another cult movie like The Invitation, which, it's that same, and I talked about this in our other panel where we talked about that, but that what makes this sort of story powerful to me is this sensation that something's wrong here, but everyone's being so friendly. Am I going to be the one who causes a commotion and starts, making a fuss and accusing people and crossing this boundary where we can never go back to whenever everyone's being nice or, playing nice, and just like the social pressure that can be exerted on you in a situation like that. So I think that, if they had nothing overtly threatening happened until the beginning of Act 3 rather than the beginning of Act 2, it seems like that's what the movie should be to me. So I don't know, Grady, do you have any opinions on that?
No, I mean, the only thing I was going to say is one of the problems I had, I mean, I liked Hereditary a lot, but I had the same problem with Hereditary I had with Midsommar, which is like, I always feel like a really good horror movie, you kind of, after it ends, you know what's going to happen next. And I feel like in both these movies, like, well, dude, I want to see the next morning. Like, does she just wake up super hungover and is like, oh, man, I feel so rotten. I really just want to drink water and sit in the sun. Oh, something smells like bear. Like, like, does she have to join the cult now? Is she going to go home? Are they going to kill her? And it's the same as Hereditary. Like, well, like, what now? Is he's like a demon? What? Are they just going to get a lot of gold and like roll around in it like Scrooge McDuck? Or are they all going to be walk around naked? Or is it the end of the world?
Clear to me that she's going to join the cult. Like, they're certainly not going to let her go home, and I don't think they're going to kill her. So I was just it seems
not that
to me
year
that she was going to join the cult.
That's going to be stressful though. Like for everyone. Like, she's not going to want to keep it secret. She's not going to want to hang. Like, like,
I think
she's
she
not a
will,
terrible
though.
person. Why? Just to escape her crime?
Well, no, I think just to escape her life. And I think that's what I find. I think that's what I find interesting about people who join cults in general, and kind of watching it from this perspective with, talking about what Paul said about reactions to grief. This was such a horrific trauma at the start of the movie, and it's histrionic and it's very Baroque. But after those beginning 15 minutes, I kind of had her sympathy. And I think, the movie primes you for that the whole way. Is it telling you something unexpected? No, like, I thought from the very beginning, she's going to join this cult. And this is the story of why this woman in particular joins this cult. And I think they're like the mural in the very beginning of the movie. It's a beautiful mural. Like the painting is gorgeous. And the first quarter of it is Danny falling through an empty space with these umbilical cords being cut off. And it's her sister and her parents on it. And there's like a skeleton, like death cutting them off. So it's just like, all right, she has no family. She starts off with no family. But at the end, you know, she has cut all her other ties to her old life. She can't go back to what she used to be. She didn't fit in it. So now she's found this new life in Harga, but what makes it sad...
Well, a new family.
Yeah, a new family in Harga, but they're exploiting her too because she can't go back to anywhere else because she did participate in murders. They know that. They're not going to let her leave. And that's kind of an extra sad on it. Now, is it interesting? Is it just nihilistic? Is it just, yeah, shitty things happen, sucks, and move on and go on to Reddit and that's it? But I think that's what kind of fascinated me about the movie. Like I felt, but I think totally see.
I think you're right. I was just going to say that, like, yeah, I mean, that is the appeal of cults, right? Isn't every cult movie about starting over? Like, you're just done. You want a fresh start. Which is appealing. You're right.
Well, and there's a really interesting juxtaposition between the beginning and the end, where at the beginning where she loses her family, she's sobbing, and her boyfriend is just sort of sitting there, not involved. And then at the end, she's sobbing, and the whole cult is like sobbing with her, and they're all sharing her pain.
Yeah.
And I think that the arc of her story is definitely that she joins the cult. And, I think that sort of gets lost amidst all the horror, but I think that's definitely that's the arc, that she, finds people who do care about her in a sort of perverse way, in a way that her boyfriends didn't.
They share her feelings. It's in communal empathy, which I thought was interesting and made sense for being attractive for a host of reasons.
But that's also, so using Hereditary and Midsommar, right? Like, what's the difference between a cult and like just a boutique religion? Like Hereditary and Midsommar are both about groups that have their own belief systems and their own things, but like they're not the same. Like one of them, Hereditary, they're part of the world and they interact, and people have their daily life and then their secret religious life. And in Midsommar, the religious life is you're isolated from the world. So which one's a cult movie, or is it just different kinds of cults, or is it a religious film?
Right. No, I mean, I think that's the core of the question, but also like I think why there's the appeal of watching a movie about a cult, or even like a documentary about a cult. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but there's a fear and an appeal to the idea of loosening yourself from the burden and responsibility of choice, right? In consequence.
Right.
I mean, when you're loosening yourself from the responsibility of choice, you don't have consequence anymore. So, I mean, at first blush, that sounds like almost like blissful, right? But the problem is, as Grady was saying, if you're going to be part of society, that's the compact. The compact of society, if you're going to participate in it, is that, you are responsible and there is consequence. So where does religion and a cult sort of end, without me getting to talking about my own personal beliefs? Where's that line of choice where it's service to their God or greater good? Where's that line? And the cult completely erases the line and severs the compact. I certainly would not argue that all religions do that, but cults certainly do. And I think
that used to be...
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. I was just gonna say what, for me, those horror stories, what they do is, what I find that when they're interesting, I find them, probing for the location of that line, like where you find it, and maybe pushing that line into an uncomfortable spot where you could maybe even like see that happening. Right. So it's almost like within a cult movie, I need the plausibility, go up to the line of almost supernatural or at least the promise of some sort of apotheosis. If I'm talking fiction, obviously, like if I'm watching a documentary about a real cult, whatever happened, they don't need to serve my fictional wants.
Well, let me talk about just because I watched a whole bunch of movies for this, and I was sort of categorizing them a little bit. And what you were saying about plausibility sort of made me think of that. So yeah, the ones we've been talking about, Midsummer and The Wicker Man, I have in my pagan category, where they're worshiping some sort of like nature or something like that. You've also got your satanic cults, which there are a lot of examples of that we might talk about. I also have a third category of sort of monster slash cosmic cults where they're worshiping some other world, some weird monster or some, cosmic monster or something. So I've got like the Void, the Endless, the Ritual, and Children of the Corn. But then what you were saying, there's also like ones that are just clearly inspired by the Manson family, and that kind of cult, where they worship everyone's obsessed with the leader who's very charismatic and he gets them to murder people and stuff like that. And so, I mean, there's a little bit of obviously overlap there, but those are the kind of the four that most things seem to fall into pretty clearly.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say really quickly, I find that it's interesting, like the supernatural cults you're talking about, like the Void and stuff like that. Like, having the supernatural in a cult movie almost ruins the concept, because like the whole point of a cult is you're supposed to have faith. If we live a certain way, if we make these certain sacrifices, if we kill these families, if we destroy these outside, if you sever your ties to your old life, we'll get this thing. We'll get revelation or apocalypse or divine gifts. But if it's just like there's some slithery tentacles there and you see them a lot and like all that, you're like, oh, okay, cool. It's already here. I don't have to do anything really.
Theresa, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I tend towards liking the more true crime aspects of cults because it really happened, and it's fascinating because cults could be so different but have a lot of similarities between them. And I think what makes a cult movie with supernatural elements work for me is that human real life aspect more than the tentacles. Like what I thought was really interesting about The Endless and what stuck with me wasn't any of the weird Lovecraftian time loop stuff. It was the brother who was trying to find his footing in life again after he left the cult, and what happens to you when your belief system is shaken like that. And it's something that I really enjoy watching in a movie like really long title here. I'm going to try to remember it. Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. I cannot say that one 4 times fast, but that's, it's a independent movie about Elizabeth Olsen's first. So before she was Scarlet Witch, she was Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, this young woman who had gone upstate to this hippie commune farm and got involved with this charismatic cult leader played by John Hawkes, who's always fantastic. And it's about the paranoia and abandonment she feels and after she leaves the cult. And that's what, elements like that work with me a lot more than the weird bells and whistles of, creepy creatures in the woods, Lovecraft, tentacle monsters, Satan. It's that human element that draws me in. And that's why, I listen to so many true crime podcasts and watch movies more like that. And a movie like that will hit me more, or a movie like Mandy even will stick with me more than, weird supernatural element stuff.
Well, there's a lot of weird supernatural elements in Mandy, though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, depending on the perspective you're taking. I mean, it's mostly just people
Theresa
on acid.
Teresa leads an amazing life that we can't even begin to comprehend.
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, everything that's there, it's really just bad acid, so it's not so different from Midsommar at all.
Well, I mean, Mandy, they summon, the bikers are like demons that they summon with magic.
Well, that's what they say, but later on in the movie, it's just intimated by the weird acid maker guy that they just took a bunch of acid and became like BDSM torture freaks. They're not really supposed to be supernatural. I think the cult just believes that they are.
Oh, that actually makes the movie a lot more interesting to me. I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right.
I 100% agree with what Theresa just said in particular to The Endless and Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. The latter, that movie is just that's one of my favorites. If I'm going to talk about favorite cult movies, just like the feel of that movie, the vibe. I don't know. As a writer and a reader and a viewer, I do love my supernatural, but I think I'm more drawn to horror when it can be grounded in realism. And even though The Endless gets pretty trippy, as Theresa said, the relationship between the brothers and the one who's like trying to rebuild his life in particular, I just found, super fascinating. And then sort of like maybe a tick away from those, but one of my favorite movies, cult movies would be Kill List, in 2010. It's like, it feels like, or 2012, it feels like we haven't had a Laird Barron. Oh, no, that's not true. We had a Laird Barron movie a couple years ago, but for anyone who's read Laird Barron, to me, Kill List felt like someone made a movie that feels like one of Laird's stories. Because it starts off as almost like this, not even almost, it starts off as this crime, like hitman thriller. And then there's weird things happening in the periphery, weird symbols cropping up. And then, the last act of the movie, it goes into folk horror, cult stuff. And I don't know, my favorite part of that was there was no explanation behind the cult necessarily. You don't know why they're doing what they're doing, which honestly for me is fine. I would almost rather it that way, because that builds into my fear of other people, like what they're capable of. And how often what other people are capable of when they're together as a group, as a mob or as a cult. There is no reason. They become reasonless. And too often when I do get the explanation, I'm like, oh, really? That, like, why would you do that if that's like the ultimate goal? So I sort of liked the aspect of that movie because, if I don't really think there are any supernatural things happening in Kill List, but there's, these hints at this bigger, sort of wider, scarier world.
Yeah, I just rewatched Kill List last week, and I was just stunned at how good it is. It's, because I remember liking. The problem is the first time I watched it, I tried to watch it without subtitles.
Same.
And talking about mysterious, like I can't understand anything the two main characters say. They have very heavy accent. I think one guy's
and very mumbly too.
Yeah, and so definitely I would recommend watching it with subtitles. The only, but I think it's spectacular. The only thing is, like, both times I watched it, I thought that the ending is like a little bit too abrupt. But that's really the only otherwise, I think that it's just a magnificent movie.
Well, don't watch Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene.
But there's something really interesting about Kill List, because it's descended from a whole separate genealogy of cult movies, like these movies that are sort of about these cults that want worldly power. Because right, the Kill List one, they're like, we don't know what they want, but they're sort of like decadent aristocrats. And and it's like, and that's sort of that witch cult thing, right? Like, these people want power, and it's a secret force behind the world, like a conspiracy that's running things and pulling the strings, and it's like, this thing of it's the secret power behind the wall. It's the Pizza Gators, or it's the 1%, or it's the New World Order, or it's Satanists, or it's Catholics, or it's Jews, or and that goes all the way back to that witch cult stuff in the 15th and 16th centuries, like they're these people with this extra power that gives them a leg up, and the bad things that happen to you are their fault and benefit them. And that's really different from like Midsummer or Mary Marcy May the 4M movie, where they just sort of want to do their thing, right? They're not part of this bigger. There's not the conspiracy theory element. Like the Rosemary's Baby has it, but Wicker Man doesn't.
It's funny you say that, Grady, because I went back and listened to our panel that we did a few years ago on demonic possession, and you were saying that like, well, these Satan worshippers, if they're living out in the woods, why are they, like, what did they get for making a deal with Satan? Really, it should be the 1% and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. And then I watched your movie Satanic Panic, that's basically the premise of the movie. So I was just wondering, like, how much credit does Geek's Guide to the Galaxy get for inspiring that movie?
Totally. I mean, like, we sent you a check, right? You got that. Because someone cashed it. No, but I do think, where Satanic Panic comes from is, I went through this phase years ago where I was like, I got to get my life together. And so I started trying to listen to all these podcasts, that were like, like Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Work Week and all these like inspirational podcasts about how to get your shit together and be successful. and they're so culty, man. The language is crazy. Like, turn yourself into a high value person where your social net worth, like, dominate the room. And like, everyone's got these crazy things that they take for granted. So they'll be like having an interview with like, Bob Iger of Disney or something. And they'll be, okay, so when did you go vegan, or when did you go keto? And they're like, when did you what's your workout? What time do you get up? When do you micro nap? And it's like, and he's like, oh, I might, like, they all do these like really culty things they take for granted. Like, they wake up at 4 a.m. They don't eat meat. They only eat all meat. Like, they just have these weird, it's just this very weird language they share, and this very weird, and it's all focused on maximum achievement, maximize yourself. And that's fucking Satanism. That's like Anton LaVey 70s Church of Satan, Temple of Set stuff, Don't let anyone get in your way. Like, be the most you can be. And if someone says, that's illegal, well, that person's wrong. So break into their house and eat their heart. Like, it's crazy.
Right. Well, I mean, it's all about like, I would say it's all about like taking advantage of just about everyone's innate want or need to be a part of a group. Right, you have to be a part of this group, and I'm not going to call Hollywood a cult, not yet anyway. But like, it's even just fascinating to see like the shared language that like grows out of like obviously this tightly knit set of people. Yeah. Like, I don't know a ton about Hollywood, but just in the last few months, it's been hilarious to me to hear all these different people, independent of each other, talk about like screenplays and use the phrase "Where's the ticking clock?" Like, what does that mean? But it's like it's in all these different people's mouths, and you can sort of almost just see like this groupthink pop up.
Yeah,
with cults, there's also a thing about power too, right? The leaders of the cult. There's we haven't really talked about the power dynamic of it as well. Like that's how they take advantage of people.
I mean, but Hollywood is I was just going to say, just to, really quickly, Hollywood is a supernatural cult, though, because there's a magic invisible force, money, behind everything. You know what I mean? It's all about accreting and moving and relocating and redistributing this invisible thing.
I couldn't help notice, Grady, that in this panel you talked about how, the powerful people in the world must be Satan worshipers because that's what they get out of it. And then ever since then, you've had all this success in Hollywood. And I'm just saying that that's just a little pattern I noticed there.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. I mean, honestly, the first time you kill and eat a baby is really, really hard. But then, like, you're feeling really down afterwards. It's like Blue Monday right after you do ecstasy or something. And then, like, all of a sudden stuff starts turning around. And you're like, shit, get me triplets. So, yeah, I mean, first one's hard. That's all I'm going to say.
I want to get Theresa back in here. Theresa, do you have anything you want to add here?
Well, now I'm really scared of Gwyneth Paltrow and her goop lifestyle. Yeah, I would love to see some more of this stuff from a female perspective, because females, women just in general, they're so much at the heart of a lot of cult movies as well. It's always the charismatic leader. But what about some of the followers? And so often it's the power dynamic being exploited between a powerful man and women. It's really, the other invisible commodity with a lot of these cults is the power of sex. And that's always really interesting to me. You don't see a lot of female cult leaders. And why is that?
What did you think, actually, Theresa, in the remake of Wicker Man? They changed it from like Lord Summerisle to Lady Summerisle, and it became this like sort of explicitly matriarchal cult. I don't know if you remember.
I mean, I mostly remember Nicolas Cage and the bees, but
not the bees.
Oh God, not the bees.
Well, let me just say then. So in the original, it's Christopher Lee runs this private island.
Right.
And in the remake, it's a woman, and they've sort of like lobotomized all the men, and so like it's like women are running the whole shebang.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of what kind of makes the remake a little more jokey. Is haha, it's funny, like women are in charge and men are basically without any power. But it's just everything about that movie feels so. Nicolas Cage is a very hard actor to kind of pigeonhole, because he plays it very deliberate, but I don't know if his intention is always coming across the right way, because it seems like everything in The Wicker Man is a giant joke. Just like it did in the second half of Mandy, just like it did in the recent movie Color Out of Space. He's so distracting, it's hard for me to think about too much of what else the movie is saying as more of a vehicle for Nicolas Cage to Nicolas Cage all over it.
You wonder if the
You know.
Wicker Man remake, if they were in on the joke or they thought they were making a serious movie.
I mean, that's what my question kind of always is with the Nicolas Cage movie. Like, you know what you're going to get, and yet you don't. And that's why they're always such delightful surprises. But, you know, when I think about women in cults, you know, I always think of, well, now I think of, you know, Martha, Marcy May, Marlene, definitely. But I think of a novel, actually, Emma Cline's The Girls, which was 2017, I think, 2017, 2016, winner of the Shirley Jackson Award. And it was basically a retelling of the Manson crime from the perspective of a Linda Kasabian type character who had survived beyond the cult and escaped it and didn't get jail time, but was still living with this world of regret and what it meant for her to be in this cult and under the sway of a powerful leader. And that's just something I'd like to see more in cult movies, which, you know, I guess doesn't quite answer your question about how it relates to The Wicker Man, but just something when I watch a cult movie, I think about the women and, you know, the other people who fall sway to these charismatic leaders, some who are more charismatic than others.
Well, you mentioned a couple of movies that there were a bunch of these movies that, you know, appeared on lists of cult movies and things that were not easy to find, so I didn't end up watching them. You mentioned like Witchfinder General and Blood on Satan's Claws, I think, Race with the Devil and Devil Rides Out were some other ones. Is there anything worth mentioning? Like, as I said, I wasn't able to track them down, but would it be worth tracking them down?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And it, you know, they're definitely more in that, like, yeah, if you liked Midsommar, definitely check out Blood on Satan's Claws. Very similar vibe. That's another one of the influences. And they're very old and kind of Technicolor, really, you know, visually beautiful as well in a different way. I think another one of the movies that it seemed harder to find, but I think I just found it is streaming on Amazon Prime now, is Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions. That's always a fun one to me because it is about a cult, like the after effects of a cult that's kind of disbanded and it's still haunting its victims and members years after the leader has supposedly died, which I thought was fun. And it's Clive Barker, so it's, you know, creepy and kind of over the top. And it's very, very 90s because it's Scott Bakula as the star.
Does anyone have any idea why it's so hard to find these? Like, I've never had so much trouble finding movies for one of these panels. I can only attribute it to cult activity. That they're trying to keep
You have to be in the know.
Yeah. Well,
you have to know someone.
Right. Actually, I mean, when I watched, Blood on Satan's Claw, you know, I tracked down like a cheap DVD. It might even been like a, region free just, to get it. So, and then Race with the Devil for a Glorious Time was on Shudder. I guess it's not on. And that was a movie that, for me, it's, totally like personal subjective sway because when I was a kid, they would play that on network television in the afternoons, and I would watch that and it's Warren Oates and, Peter Fonda, Loretta Swit in an RV being chased by Satanists. So it's, it's certainly sort of a bit of a silly movie, but the end of it actually is still, I find it, mainly because it scared the crap out of me as a kid, like the very end of the movie. There is like a quality to the relentlessness of the cult, especially for, if that's what you're looking for, like, oh my God, there's, you find out there's this cult and like whatever town you go into, there's more and there's more. So it sort of plays that sort of paranoia, 70s vibe very well. I do want to mention, like, since I sort of mentioned it earlier when I said Kill List felt like a Laird Barron movie, we actually have had a Laird Barron movie. It's called They Remain. And that movie is about, It isn't. So these two, these two people end up going out into the upstate New York woods, and they're sort of studying this area where there was cult activity, where there was clearly, and there were murders. So these two people weren't in the cult. They're there sort of experimenting and trying to investigate the purported, like, there's weirdness happening there or any supernatural phenomena. They want to see, like, if the flora and fauna around are somehow reflecting, like, the, I don't know, negative psychic energy of what had happened with the cult. And you see some flashbacks of the cult activity, but it's, instead of, like, what the people are going through, it's about, like, what's this place going through after, like, they had this cult there. It was just a sort of a different, interesting take on sort of the aftermath of a cult. Instead of the people, it's actually the place.
Sounds like I should have watched that one. How come that one?
I'm sorry. January and February are my busiest brain dead months at school.
And it also stars William Jackson Harper, who's Chidi on The Good Place and in Midsommar.
It all comes back to Midsommar. No.
It all comes back to Midsommar, trying to keep it on brand. But maybe he would be a good guest on Geek's Guide because he seems to have a proclivity for the weird in his films, which I kind of respect. And he was much smarter in They Remain than he was in Midsommar.
Yes.
Well, and Chidi is really into moral philosophy, which is what I studied in college. So I don't know if the actor is into I mean, he probably picked up, if he wasn't, he probably picked up a lot of it just playing the character for those years. So yeah, if you're listening, shoot us an email. We'll get you on. But speaking of these movies kind of from the 70s and stuff, did anyone see House of the Devil? It's this 2009 movie, but movie. It's made incredibly to look like it was made in 1980 or something. It's just eerie how much it looks like it was made in 1980.
And it's got Tom Noonan in it.
What did you think, Grady, overall of House of the Devil?
I liked it. I mean, it's one of those funny things. It's weird to look at that now because Ty West, the director, when he made House of the Devil, like, it's really, I mean, there's some slow parts in that movie, but his faithfulness to recreating the era and the style of filmmaking and the style of storytelling and the set dressing, I mean, just everything is so dead on in that movie that it really, the dedication on the budget he had really takes, you can feel it. There's some movies you can really feel that, like, whoever's making it really, they'd be doing it for free if they had no money. And then it's like, yeah, Ty West, man, fuck yeah, he's going places. And then it's just sort of like, his stuff after that didn't feels quite so to burn so hot for me. And then you wind up with his cult movie, The Sacrament, which is this John Goodman starring film that's really kind of loosely based on the Jonestown Massacre. And I feel like, and it's so objectionable. Like, just to make a found footage movie about Jonestown and kind of like file off the serial numbers, it feels a little dirty. And it's like,
I agree.
Like with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like, whatever problems you may have with it, and I had some, but like, there's an existential joy in seeing Tex Watson get bitten in the balls, with a dog. Like, there's this joy in sort of the rewriting and the engaging with the history. And with The Sacrament, it's just like, hey, I found this Wikipedia article about something really horrible that happened, and now I'm going to make a movie where the horrible thing happens. I don't know, something about it really sat wrong with me, and maybe it's me. But so it's hard to watch House of the Devil now for me, because it's like, when I saw it for the first time, I thought it was leading to like these great places, and instead it's led to a movie that I really just really leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And I hate it, and it might just be me, but for me personally, it's tough. It's still a great movie.
Interesting.
And Tom Noonan's fantastic.
Were you saying something, Theresa?
I agree. I didn't like the Sacrament. To me, it felt, again, like there's so many retellings of the Manson crimes that are just exploitative and gross, and no, it's just totally not for me. I'd much rather listen to a podcast like Heaven's Gate, or there's a podcast that's just called Cults, and it goes into the story of some of these crimes and the sorrow and the horror of something like that. Yeah, it's nothing that feels good to watch in a movie like that, and it doesn't add anything new. It just feels exploitative.
Paul, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would add that I love The House of the Devil. And I think it's fine if it came out now. I don't know if it would, it would maybe seem a little more plain just because like there were so many, like in 2009, there wasn't just the glut of 80s nostalgia or making things look like they had taken place in the 80s. So I can understand someone watching it now and not being as into it just because in 2009, I was like, oh my God, this looks like it was, that was my first reaction, like Grady's. I haven't seen The Sacrament. I do enjoy Ty West. I thought his movie after House of Devil was quite good as well, called The Innkeepers.
I did like,
and that's more of a ghost story. And I don't know. I'm like, I haven't seen The Sacrament, so I'm certainly not going to defend it. But I don't know. Like, I think you can make a movie. I'm not saying it's that one. I think you could make a movie about the Jonestown Massacre. That's not exploitative. Obviously, it'd be hard to do. What's the line there? Yeah. So honestly, when I heard what the movie was about, like I never watched it because like, I guess I don't feel like watching that. I wanted more Innkeeper, wanted more Innkeepers and more House of the Devil.
Well, I think Eli Roth Presents The Sacrament was really all I needed to know about The Sacrament before I even watched it, because Eli Roth, I don't know what I was expecting otherwise.
Well, like Grady, it seems like there were some similarities between Satanic Panic and House of the Devil. Is that what do you think about that? And is that is there a whole genre of young woman shows up at house with Satanists that I don't know about?
Oh yeah, well that's Rosemary's Baby, right? Which is sort of like a foundational text for horror these days. And it kind of ties into what Theresa was saying, which is that there is a thing with cults, especially real life cults, but in general where it is a hierarchical structure with a charismatic man at the top and sex and not just humpy sex, but sexual dynamics and sexual politics play a huge part in keeping people in line. So it is cool when people do stuff like Midsummer or The Wicker Man or, where they try, or House of the Devil, where they try to sort of upend that some. Or even the 4M movie, Marcy, Mary, Madeline, looking more from the woman's point of view of what this experience is like. Because it's really fascinating to be like, okay, what makes someone want to get rid of their old life, just rub it out and start fresh with a new name and a new belief system and new friends and a new place? And is that even possible, or is your old life always going to drag you back?
One of my favorite parts of Mandy was the first time Mandy meets Jeremiah Sand, the cult leader, and he gives her this whole long speech, and he's, in this shitty living room surrounded by his other loser followers, and he takes his robe off and he's naked and he's like, "You're special, Mandy, be special with me."
Well, and he's playing his own band's record.
Yes. Oh yeah. That was the best part. It's like, "Listen to my shitty folk music, Mandy. You're a special one." And she just lets loose with this wicked, wicked laugh. And I love the energy of that moment, but you also know exactly what's going to happen to her after she laughs at him in his naked, literal and figurative, naked vulnerability there of, "Look at me, look at my trip, I'm so great." And she laughs at him. And you know what's going to happen next, but that's one of my favorite moments in that whole movie.
Well, that's
just seeing that dynamic subverted.
Isn't that Margaret Atwood quote? I think it's her, men are scared that women will laugh at them. Women are scared men will kill them. That's a cult in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's exactly what that moment was,
So I was going to ask Grady, since you said that you prefer cult movies without supernatural stuff in them, how come you put supernatural stuff in Satanic Panic?
Oh, well, because it had to be. That was the mandated by the movie. And also, I don't want to make a movie about Satanists that don't have superpowers. You know what I mean? I want to, if it's a movie about Satanists, I want to see Satan. What's the fun otherwise? Save it for the people with talent, like, who made The Wicker Man and stuff, Peter Schaefer and things for the movies without supernatural stuff.
See, Paul, have you written any cult stuff? I think you said one of your books had some cult.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Cabin at the End of the World. I mean, the four people who show up. I mean, that's part of the question. Are these four people? Are they a part of a cult, or are they actually there at some at the bidding of some supernatural power? So I mean, since there's only four of them, you don't get sort of like the whole like cult dynamic, and part of what I tried to twist that around with was have it sort of let out in the book that they claim that they they'd only met each other online, and this was like the first time they were together in person. So a lot of it was trying to play the balance of, okay, are they like crazy cultists, or is something supernatural happening? So I definitely view that as sort of like one of my longer cult works. And I wrote an early short story that I turned into a novella called The Harlequin and the Train. The Harlequin and the Train was reprinted by Concord Free Press, which you can get the copy for free under the name, oh my God, what's the name of the book? Another Way to Fall. It's The Harlequin and the Train, and a novella by Brian Evanson, who might be my favorite writer of cult stories. If we could talk about Brian, maybe.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, so anyway, The Harlequin and the Train, I guess I would just briefly describe as Fight Club for cannibals. So there's a cannibal club in the periphery of what's happening. Or not even the periphery, I shouldn't say that. It's full-on cannibal club cult.
Did you do any like research into cults or anything?
No.
To write Cabinet?
No. I take that back. I guess I did read a little. I focused more on the phenomena of TIs, targeted individuals, they're sometimes referred to. And the phenomenon of how like these people are finding each other online. Part of the idea of TIs or targeted individuals is that they think, obviously, they have uncontrollable paranoid thoughts. That the joke is the tinfoil hatters. But what's been happening for the past decade or so, with the internet is, they'll go, these people who think that, this is bugged, the government's out to get me, they're doing this. When they go to the therapist tell them, no, like this is not real, and as you could imagine, if that was you, it'd bum you out. And they find these online communities where, no, this is real. This is happening to me too. So many of these people are eschewing professional mental health and just reinforcing, their own beliefs online. There was one of the many mass shooters in our country within the last couple of years, and it happened on an army base, I believe. And he was he was a quote unquote TI and was a part of some different online groups. So I read about that, for Cabin.
Well, how about Theresa? I mean, you said that you're doing all this, you're listening to all these podcasts about cults and everything. Has that influenced your writing at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. I find them really fascinating. Again, it's that human element. One that I always recommend to people if they want something very emotional, very raw, is the Heaven's Gate podcast. It's about the Heaven's Gate cult. Those were the Haley Bob Comet people with the sneakers and the bowl cuts. It was another mass suicide, and it's hosted by a man who grew up in a fundamental cult himself. He was his family was the only people of color within their religious cult. It was some sect of Mormonism or something like that. It wasn't entirely clear. So he came at it with a perspective of what made these people join Heaven's Gate, and interviewed some of their surviving family members and used real recordings from the cult leaders. And I thought that painted a really human, very sad story, but very interesting and compelling. So I always recommend that one to people. I recommend, there's one that's just called Cults, and it's about a different cult, usually every week. And then if you're interested in learning more about the Manson cult, a podcast called You Must Remember This, which is primarily about Hollywood history, spends a whole 12-episode season about the Beach Boys, the Beatles, everything like that, and Manson's growing career, and focuses an awful lot on the Manson girls as well. And that one was also really fascinating and really well researched. And I just find I find cults in general really interesting. Communal living, mass hallucination and the power dynamics, and like I said, I'm always looking for stories and interested in writing stories about women in these situations, because so much of the focus is always on the charismatic Charlie Manson types.
So you've written stories about this, or?
I have, yeah. Well, I'm working on one right now, but it's not published yet. But yeah, that's been an area I've been exploring a lot more.
Very cool. I mean, Grady, were you like a cult investigator or something? Am I like imagining that, or?
No, you're imagining that. I worked for a
Were you not a
parapsychological
Were you a witch finder general?
Yeah, and it's funny, like I always get it mixed up. Is the witch supposed to float or supposed to sink? I can't ever remember. No, it was a parapsychological research lab, so yeah, not cults. But I was just going to say really quickly, just to echo what Theresa said, the season of You Must Remember This about the Manson family, I avoided listening to it for a really long time. I love that podcast. I was like, I don't want to hear more shit about the Manson family, blah, blah, blah. I finally listened to it, and it's amazing. It's really, really great.
There's one other movie I watched that I want to mention before we run out of time here, called The Ritual. And it's these 4, I think, British backpackers who go. Wait, where? I forget actually now.
Like
I think it's
Sweden, right?
It's Sweden too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The less sunny part of Sweden.
Right. Less pastels.
And they sort of take a shortcut through the woods and end up being stalked by this kind of like moose demon monster and the cultists who worship it. And I thought it was, I think the biggest weakness of it is just that it was completely predictable. Like I knew exactly what was going to happen at every stage of the movie. But I thought that the 4 main characters behaved very believably. And so I guess it's sort of a contrast to Midsummer in that way, with sort of a similar premise. But just, like the way that the characters in Midsummer behaved they didn't seem like real people and act in a believable way. And The Ritual, I thought I really believed that those guys were real people, and they acted the way I thought people in that situation would behave, with a sort of growing dread and total awareness of how of the danger that they're in.
Yeah, I didn't see the movie. I read the book, and the book's the same way, where the bigger supernatural story, I'm like, whatever. But the character interaction stuff's great.
Yes, I enjoyed both the book and the movie, and what I really liked, I agree with what you said, David, about the characters. I thought their relationship was very interesting and realistic. I thought they were sort of nicely all flawed, not flawed to the point of being, everyone's a jerk, but just more realistic people. I thought the design of the monster was great. I thought there was a proper sense of awe when it was sort of finally fully revealed, especially within sort of the cult town, that the last 1 or 2 of the backpackers, stumble upon. It's interesting how different it is in the book, though. I don't know if you've read the book, David, but
I haven't. No.
In the book.
Who is the book by?
Adam Neville, wonderful British horror writer. And in the book, the big difference is the cult is these 4 black metal fans.
It's not like this.
No, that's not in the movie. No, it's like it's a cult. It's like a weird sort of out of time almost, and there's a lot of people. In the book, it's these 4, these 4 death metal fans. And I listened to the audiobook, and the voices were great. It was, so that part of the book is much different. That part in the book, sort of that part of the story is a much different feel. Because the 4 death metal people are almost like borderline incompetent, which almost makes the suffering of the main character even worse. What he has to go through. So I found it, fascinating. I thought both were successful. Like it was an interesting sort of juxtaposition how you could have these 2 different things with a similar core story, but really be, fundamentally different in some ways too.
Is that part of a larger trend of horror stories set in Sweden? Like people go to Sweden and bad things happen to them, or is it just those 2 movies?
I think there's a bigger trend of going to Europe, right? Because then you can throw in the Hostel movies and the guys who did The Endless. Didn't they do a movie called summer or springtime or something.
Spring,
Yeah,
yeah.
Vacation.
Spring.
Yeah, spring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Americans should not go to Europe.
Yeah, they should just avoid any place really old, and I guess that's why they have to go over there, because America is too young for cults.
Oh yeah, but that's
Right.
also a trope that's in Hong Kong movies. There's this huge trope of like Hong Kong people going on vacation to like the uncivilized parts of Southeast Asia, like Indonesia or like Malaysia, and they always get like a blood curse slapped on them or disturb a tribe somewhere and wind up having to eat worms or something. So it's really similar. Going on vacation, everyone worries about going on vacation. It's very fraught.
I just have this other thing in my notes here where I had this like odd experience where I was hanging out with a friend from high school, and somebody just mentioned offhandedly like, "Oh yeah, my mom used to be in a cult," and I was like, "Really?" And then before I could really get any more details, everyone else in the room was like, "Oh yeah, my mom was in a cult too," and
Whoa.
I felt like I was the only person. I felt kind of left out, like I was the only person there whose mom was never in a cult. And
You should have joined a cult.
Yeah, I mean. For that sense of belonging, right? But yeah, so I don't know. It was just making me wonder if people joining cults is a more common phenomenon than I had hitherto appreciated.
I thought you were going to say it made you wonder if your mom actually had joined a cult and you were just unaware of the cult
Mom.
joining. You should ask her.
Yeah.
So looking more into like Martha, Marcy May, Marlene led me down this rabbit hole of just clicking on different kinds of cults. And apparently there are a lot of cults surrounding farms, like these new like hipster commune farms. People leave New York City and go upstate and they're going to work on a farm with some people. And apparently that's really ripe for cult
that's where
activity.
I was. Yeah, north of New York City. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about where your produce is coming from, I guess. And I guess it's maybe the intersection of where young idealists meet predatory hippies.
Or it's like what Paul was saying earlier about like the Laird Barron film that y'all were talking about, where it's the landscape does it, because upstate New York, like in the 19th century, had so many religious movements sweep across it. It was called the Burned Over District because there were so many like cults and movements and new churches coming out of there. So maybe it never changes.
Now I'm thinking, geez, have there any been big movies? I'm sure there are, but all these cults are in like rural or certainly maybe not urban areas. Like where are the city cults? Where are the,
I think
Children
those are
of
the ones run by
Free
Satan.
Urban Harvest.
I did not see that one.
Well, see, I
What
feel
did you
like
say, Theresa?
Satan's
Sorry?
for those highfalutin city folk, the elitist
Rosemary's Baby.
cultists. They get
Rosemary's
Satan
Baby, right,
and the
right.
power.
Yeah.
Those rural folk get those different kinds of cults.
There was The Believers, I think, with Roy Scheider or Martin
yeah.
Sheen, one or the other. I can't remember. But it's like a voodoo cult or something in the city.
Right. That's right. I remember that one. The bug coming out of the the growth on the woman's face. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, so urban, it's like Satanism is in cities and paganism is in isolated places, and
so are weird dudes like in jeans with no shirt who have like 16 women living in a yurt.
yeah, so in monsters,
Exactly.
monster cults, like Cthulhu cults, that's also well, unless you're in like Innsmouth or something, right? I guess, right?
Right.
Small town.
Well, now I'm thinking, Grady, like you're the Satanic Panic 2, the panicking. Should be Satan shows up at this like rural cult in the sticks, and he's like, "What the hell?"
Hates it. We were going to call it Satanic Panicier. But I like the panicking. But yeah, no, totally winds up. Well, that's always the question about possession, right? Like, why does Satan want to possess like a 11-year-old girl? Why not like the president? Like Satan would be so pissed off to possess or like to wind up with a cult in like rural Oklahoma. Like, Jesus Christ.
You got to write that.
Well, where does Hereditary take place? Is that a city or a suburb? Is that Portland?
I think that's more of a suburb, I think. But I felt it felt suburban to me.
Yeah.
Suburban.
Paul Tremblay, professional writer.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like Grady will have lots of opportunities to write more movies because weren't there like 10? I didn't read the article, but weren't there like 10 companies all fighting for you or something? You're like super popular now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Those things always.
But he had to burn his spleen on the altar of.
Do you know
something in Hollywood?
After a while, you've like killed and eaten so many babies, you don't notice anymore. But then you have to do a kitten to really amp it up, and that's hard. That is hard. Like you look into their cute little eyes, it's tough. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that again.
Well, you and Paul both have really big followings. Do you ever worry about culty people showing up at your book signings? Anything
I
that's
show up
kind
at
of
Paul's
like
book signing.
skirted on weird?
Does Paul ever worry about Grady showing up at his book signings?
Yeah, I remember Grady tweeting out about like murdering me before one of my New York City readings.
You're still, but I didn't. It was like a light stab. It was a light stab. I didn't murder you.
There was like skin eating reference too, maybe.
Yeah, you had to get like 3 stitches. It was no big deal.
I mean, sure. I mean, it's not like an active worry, but like if you let your head go there, I mean, for me, it's more been like I'm less afraid about like I think this is more of a reflection of the time that we live in. I'm less afraid of the one-on-one interaction with people than I am internet interaction. Because I try to be somewhat accessible, and there are times like, oh man, maybe I should close my DMs here and there. Because I don't know, like some odd messages come through, and I usually ignore those. But like to me, that's the more like, oh God, I probably should take more of my life off the internet than is out there already.
Well, I swear I heard Daryl Schweitzer one time say that at Weird Tales they used to get letters periodically from people who claimed to be actual Cthulhu cultists.
I had some weird Facebook messages. It wasn't a cultist, but in reference to a head full of ghosts, someone was claiming that their niece was going through, and like some of the stuff that they had said was, I felt both sad, like if this is really happening, but also like really like, I don't think this person is a healthy person to be talking to for me, or a safe person, maybe I should say.
Yeah, I feel like there ought to be a Geek's Guide to the Galaxy cult. I hope everyone listening. We need a newsletter or something.
Well, I mean, Grady's at what? You said 18 and Theresa's at 10? I mean,
we already
have a couple of yeah.
Yeah, you're like a level 3. It could be kind of like Brian Evanson's Brotherhood of the Mutilation, which Paul had talked about Brian Evanson earlier. Yeah, that's one of my favorite cult stories ever. Brotherhood of the Mutilation, also called Last Days. I think he likened it to novel. And yeah, it's an amputee cult, and you get invited to join it if you're someone who has voluntarily amputated yourself. So you're following along with a cop joining this cult, and of course, the higher up you go, the more pieces of yourself you get rid of. So you could imagine like the top tier is basically just a torso.
A wiggly torso.
It's yeah, I mean, no ears, no nose, like, it's very extreme, but it's really well written. And yeah, if anyone would probably have a cult following, I'd imagine it'd be Brian Evanson.
Wait, I got distracted for a sec. Were you saying that for us in the Geek's Guide cult, we have to amputate parts of our body? Because, okay, sure, I guess.
I mean...
if we want to keep getting invited back.
I think that's Brian Evanson's cult that you have to do that. I know that Brian actually, with one of his chapbooks, signed a few with his blood. Whoa. I mean, that was a while ago.
Whoa.
And I don't know how many he signed. Yeah, I don't know how many he signed. but a lot of Brian's short fiction too, is references to cults. And I don't want to speak for Brian necessarily, but he was kicked out of the Mormon Church, or I don't think they say excommunicated. Maybe they do. So, within his cult stories, there's, clearly some of the, I don't want to say the anxiety of Mormonism, that's sort of in there, that I feel like that sort of grounds it, especially some of his early novels. I think his earliest novels, pre-Last Days, are definitely a little bit more about sort of, the experience that he went through, because he was teaching at the time, and basically he got excommunicated for what he was writing. Or I shouldn't say excommunicated.
I think they do say that.
Kicked out. Do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
I interviewed him, 2 months ago or so, and so if anyone's curious, you can listen to that because we talked about that.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not. Paul Tremblay is not calling Mormonism a cult. I am not calling it that. So but within Brian's stories, he sort of, he takes that, what can be a blurry line between religion and cults and makes it even blurrier, which I think makes it a little bit more, fills the stories with a little bit more anxiety because it makes it feel real. It also makes you question your own beliefs, and where that blurry line goes. So yeah, so much of Brian's work, I think if people out there want to read about, fictional treatments of cults, I think Brian's, you can't go wrong with his stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we've been focusing on movies, but I guess, are there any other writers that write about cults that are worth mentioning here?
There's, I hate mentioning these books because they're really pervy, but they're really fascinating. There's a writer from the 80s named Russ Martin, who wrote all these super satanic panic books. They really take the idea that there's a secret satanic cult running the world seriously. And the titles are the desecration of Susan Browning and the education of Jennifer Parrish and the obsession of Sally Yang or Wing or something. And they're all set in the same world, and people cross over from book to book, and it's the cult's big ability is to mind control people. So what it'll do is it'll make you addicted to your master or your mistress, and they never quite have sex, but it's a CEO of a company will then be found in a French maid outfit, scrubbing the floors with a toothbrush on some woman's house. And I hate her. She humiliates me. But if she's not around me every second of the day, I want to kill myself. And it's really, there's something about these books on their own. They're really weird, but taken as a group, there's 6 of them. It's this really creepy ass world view of this, this world where everything behind the scenes is a power game, and everyone just wants to humiliate other people, and it's really, and you can't escape. People will try to get out, but then they'll just miss being in it so much they'll go crawling back, and they're really weird. They're mostly out of print now, but I don't know. I feel weird. I feel disreputable recommending them, but they've really stuck with me. They're so creepy.
All right, cool. So
it's kind of like what you were saying about Brian Evison's Brotherhood of Mutilation. This idea of what people will do to themselves, is so much worse than what other people will do to them, I think, for me.
Mm.
All right, cool. So we're pretty much out of time. So why don't we start getting some final thoughts in here? So Theresa, any final thoughts on the subject of cults in horror?
Just suddenly got a flash of Homer Simpson talking about leader beans. So I should maybe get that out of my head. I think what makes cults so scary is the vulnerability they show in people, and especially people who are deeply unsatisfied and seeking. And I think people can relate to that. So you're always wondering why. Why would someone voluntarily join in Harga or the Brotherhood of the Mutilation or any other host except for Satan? I mean, I think he's a special case. But yeah, I think what makes it scary is what makes them so plausible. And I just really enjoy looking at where they intersect.
Paul, final thoughts on cults and horror? Yeah, I mean, everything Theresa said, plus, I mean, I think I'm always disturbed by the idea that these otherwise reasonable people who aren't, necessarily, descending into mental illness or succumbing to mental illness, they're these people who have their faculties, but for whatever, reason, whether, they're emotionally broken or damaged in some way, that they search out these groups. And even the idea of a cult coming to get you, as silly as it sounds, for that sort of more thrill aspect of the cult story. I mean, I've always felt like the slasher, the slasher is one person. I could get away, get him, I could get in my car. But, if you're trying to like, deal with a cult, it's, there's that paranoid aspect too that sticks with me when I watch cult movies.
Yeah, well, there's the scene in Marcy May Marlene where it's this home invasion, involving
Right.
a cult, and it's this very like understated, low key sort of situation and conversation and everything, but it's incredibly creepy. It's like more creepy than your typical slasher situation because it's so, it feels so real and it's so understated. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I'll say, I mean, oftentimes for these panels, I'll watch a lot of movies, and usually a lot of them are not very good. But I think I pretty much enjoyed all these cult movies. So, there's something, either there's something about the concept that appeals to me, or they're just, brings out the best in a lot of these filmmakers. But and so,
And you're just, or it just means you have to ask mom about her cult activity.
maybe there's some hereditary appeal there, but yeah, and especially like Martha Marcy May Marlene and Kill List, like The Ritual, I said, the original Wicker Man are just terrific. So yeah, definitely check those out. But so Grady, final thought.
Yeah, no, just cult fiction and movies I think are great because they're always like critiques of like the one answer solution, right? Like a cult is a way where you're like, oh, this is the point of view that explains everything in the world. I don't need other points of view. And I just need to commit to this one more and be more devoted and more pure and really, this person is telling me the right information. I need to shut down the other ones. And I feel like that's only going to get more in the world now as people are moving more and more to voluntary communities and there's all this fracturing and stuff. And so I just want to say, once again, horror was there first. Suck it, other genres.
Yeah, and I also just want to say, if there's anyone, if anyone's listening to this and you think that you might be involved in a cult or someone definitely like leave that cult and join the Geeks Guide to the Galaxy cult instead, because we need your money more than they do.
I definitely endorse this cult. Maybe the initiation could be watching as many Nicolas Cage movies in a row as you could possibly stand, and that will like get you up the ladder.
Can we get hooded robes or cloaks?
Yeah.
Cloaks. Sure, why not?
Cloaks.
I think we're setting the precedent. We can make the rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in.
All right, absolutely. All right, cool. So let's wrap things up there. So we've been speaking with Grady Hendrix, Theresa DeLucci, and Paul Tremblay. So thanks everyone so much for joining us.
Thanks, man. Hail Satan.
One of us.
One of us.
And that was our panel. So big thanks again to Grady Hendrix, Theresa DeLucci, and Paul Tremblay for joining us on the show. And remember that Geeks Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please sign up to give us $1 or $2 per episode over at patreon.com/geeks. And if you'd rather make a one-time contribution, you can do that via check or PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. So big thanks again to everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it. I also want to thank Tina Fine for sponsoring today's show. Check out her highly unconventional superhero comic Off-Girl over at offgirl.com. All right, so that was our show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is a production of Wired.com. For more information about the show, visit geeksguideshow.com. To learn more about your host, visit davidbarrkirtley.com. Music and voiceover produced by yours truly, Jack Kincaid. If you enjoyed this program, tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, tell no one. Thank you for listening.